All right. Thanks, everyone. Andy Sajous here. I'm one of our field CTOs who covers healthcare. I'm joined here with Prathima. And we're going to talk today about Epic IRE. And so I know it's a hot topic for organizations that are exploring IRE. And more importantly, I think today's conversation, we want to kind of maybe eliminate some of the confusion around what we're hearing in the market. So I think before we kind of jump into it, I just want to do some introductions with Prathima and myself. And so I'll go first. Andy Sajous, I've been with the head for about 10 years. The first 6 years, I worked with a lot of major medical health systems in Chicago. And then now the past 4 years, not only driving a lot of our go-to-market around healthcare, aligning our partnerships like AWS and Prathima, as well as evangelizing all the good work we're doing across the head organization. Prathima, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure. Thanks, Andy, and the head team for this collaboration. Prathima Srinivas, I lead the worldwide public sector SI consulting partners for our healthcare business. I've been with AWS 5.5 years. I started off supporting all the academic medical centers for the West Coast, and now we're working with partners like iHead on our healthcare business because everything we do is through partners. And I'm very excited about this session today.
That's great.
Off to you, Andy.
Thank you. Thanks, Prathima. And one thing I'll like to highlight is today's webinar is a two-part series. Today, we're very much focused on Epic IRE and what that solution looks like, obviously sponsored through AWS. Part two is actually sponsored through Rubrik. We're going to look at a little more holistic idea of recovery. And so I do kind of see these as, a good combination of how do we help health systems around cyber resiliency. And more importantly, I think, it kind of tells the entire story as we kind of package this together. And so we'll share some details around what the webinar April 30th looks like. But please join us if you like today's content and you want to hear more from us. And so I think before we kind of jump into the content, I do want to talk a little bit about heads and AWS partnership. And so I would say we've spent a lot of time with Prathima and her team for the past 3 years now since we signed our strategic collaboration agreement with AWS. That means we align a lot of our go-to-market messaging as well as our solution development with AWS. And so Prathima and a lot of the resources that she brings to the table help us focus on Epic on AWS architectures. How do we align architecture around precision medicine, healthcare landing zone, and more importantly, how do we enable our healthcare clients to move workloads to cloud? And so if I haven't said this already, 40% of our client base is healthcare providers, not just healthcare life sciences, but providers. As well as you look at kind of our Epic expertise, Ahead has a rich history of building a lot of traditional infrastructure for Epic. If you had to count, it's probably close to 60 plus in that space. And then now we're working very closely with our partners at AWS around what do these architectures look like on AWS. And so happy to support those types of conversations if anyone in the audience is interested in having that discussion. Lastly, I'll talk about just, our healthcare competency. So that was a good success of 2024, but that also got understated by our global partner our Partner of the Year for Healthcare Life Sciences award, also awarded to us in 2024. So a lot of good mojo going between Ahead and AWS, and I think we're very excited about the partnership. Prathima, anything else you want me to highlight?
No, we are excited. Like you mentioned, Andy, it's been a collaboration, and we can't wait to talk about the IRE and also work with more customers as we build this partnership more collaboratively.
That's great. And so I will kind of hit on this. And when we talk about kind of just the overall recovery or cyber recovery solutions, I think there's many aspects that go in these types of solutions, whether we're aligning it to BIA, where we assign, for example, Epic and from a strategic impact. But more importantly, like as we see recovery, it's a holistic solution. It's not just necessarily our data protection appliances or our clean room targets. And if that's AWS and that's public cloud, we absolutely can support that. And then more importantly, the process that goes behind these types of solutions. And so if you're going to join us for part 2 of the series, we're absolutely going to go a little bit deeper into kind of how we build and architect these all-encompassing solutions. We see Epic IRE on AWS as a core component of this, especially when we're talking about some of the impact to timing, right? So, if organizations get hit with ransomware and more importantly want to sustain operations as a lifeboat solution, we see this as a piece of the puzzle. And this is what the slide's meant to bring to the table. But also, that's supported with a lot of our architecture expertise around not only proven reference architectures around on-prem and public cloud, more importantly, all the solution IPing that we've done with many healthcare organizations over the years, as well as a lot of, I'd say, process maturity around run books, as well as incident response, as well as how do we help organizations operationalize these types of recovery solutions. And so the point I'm trying to make is we see this as a critical piece to the IP that we bring to the table, as well as we're excited about the offering with AWS because we see as an accelerator to bring I would say an insurance policy or a solution to the table for organizations in a time of need. So I think let's kind of just jump right into it. And so what is Epic IRE and why now? You may have heard the term Epic IRE. You may have heard the term cloud read only. I think it's good to level set on what does it mean from an Epic standpoint, and more importantly, what are clients looking to do? And so, and Prathima, you can keep me honest here, but at UGM last fall, Epic announced what they called Codename Harbor, which was basically a replacement for cloud read only. So for folks who've been kind of tracking this kind of world for a little bit, Epic was positioning cloud read only, which is basically a third copy, but now has kind of moved what they called Codename Harbor IRE, which has now limited write capabilities. And so what IRE is it's basically a lifeboat, a third copy of Epic that's essentially isolated, does not live in your production or DR data centers, but allows you access in a time of critical need. So for example, if an organization gets hit with ransomware, we see this isolated third copy as the ability to provide access into Epic, whether they're leveraging it for scheduling or other critical needs in the time of a ransomware event. Prathima, anything else you want to kind of add around kind of just the definition of Epic IRE?
Only thing I want to add is, so all the customers, right, who are on Epic, whether on-prem, on hosting, so they all have the opportunity to explore an IRE, which is the isolated recovery environment. So the good news is, it takes a minimal time, and this is where we see the partnership with Ahead is going to help customers, to move on their business resiliency solutions. So,
sure,
yeah, this is exciting.
Yeah, and so when you kind of look at the now aspect of it, like why is this important now? And I think we don't have to kind of go over some of what we've seen in the news around ransomware and health systems, but we see the impact on a daily basis, right? So not only are we talking about the impact of critical support services, or more importantly, the clinical impact that ransomware has, but also at a revenue standpoint. I think some of the assessments we're seeing is close to 1 to 1.5 million revenue impacted daily every time a health system is impacted with a ransomware. And without solutions like IRE, we see Epic being offline for many weeks, right? So not only are we talking about the entire IT ecosystem, but when organizations have to essentially run on paper and can't get access to Epic, that's just, it provides a lot of barriers in that type of scenario. And then lastly, not only are cyber insurance premiums going up, in many cases, we've seen organizations, for example, not able to insure from a cyber standpoint, meaning either they don't have the critical infrastructure or security mechanisms in place to support that. And this is an issue that seems to be rising on a daily basis. And so when we look at the benefit of IRE and why we want to take this to market, or more importantly, why Epic is advising their clients to do this, is we can avoid lost revenue. We can provide continued patient care because we give them access to the EHR. More importantly, there's a reduction in cyber premiums by having Epic IRE in place. And then lastly, like the investment that we see if we're going to move this to AWS is pretty small, right? So like and this is not necessarily the entire Epic environment. When we look at the monthly cost, it ranges anywhere between $10,000 to $15,000 in AWS cloud consumption. And more importantly, like the time it takes to actually deploy Epic IRE, we're not talking months, we're talking a handful of weeks, right? So organizations can roll this out pretty quickly. It has no impact to production, meaning we're not making any modifications or to prod and DR from an impact standpoint. And then lastly, I think that the cost investment allows us to bring this lifeboat, or this, I would say, this insurance policy in place for, I would say, a limited a fraction of what their total investment is in the Epic infrastructure. Prathima, anything else you want to hit on that I might have glossed over?
No, I think you covered it. Thanks, Andy.
So why AWS? And Prathima, maybe I think you're probably best suited to kind of answer these types of questions.
Yes, thanks, Andy, again. So we at AWS, right, we are committed. We want to support all the hospitals and health systems to transform their patient outcomes. I think I failed to inform in the beginning that me as a physician, being in healthcare industry for 25 years, we're constantly looking at ways from AWS to help our customers advance their data-driven insights, whether it's to improve their operational efficiency. We are constantly working with partners like iHead and others to drive those innovation across the healthcare ecosystem. So by choosing AWS for IRE, what the organizations are aligning is with a platform which will support them, whether it's the enhanced care delivery, what Andy was talking about, bringing down their insurance premium, while maintaining the infrastructure, which is a scalable, secure, and cost-effective platform. So what you guys will see is, I think you bring up the next slide. Thank you. So the Class Research, I don't know how many of you know about this. Class Research is an independent healthcare IT research firm. They publish the insights based on the direct feedback from the healthcare provider organizations. And they also conduct like a very in-depth interviews with the healthcare providers, and they validate those responses. So that's why these reports are very trusted across the healthcare industry. So in the latest report, as you guys can see here, AWS earned a leading 94.2 performance score. We outperformed our competition. Normally, I don't like to focus on our competition, but this is something that we have received from the Class Research. What this score really means is how satisfied are our healthcare organizations with their cloud partner across, whether it's reliability, value, outcomes, and all the support that AWS has offered to these organizations. And this data widely shows how the large and the mid-sized health systems, especially if they're running their Epic workloads, not just for disaster recovery, even for production, whether it's a training environment, we have seen that data show across. This kind of adoption, what really speaks is trust from their healthcare providers that they place in AWS to power their most critical applications. As we all know, Epic is one of the most critical applications in the hospital systems today. And that's the amount of work that we have done at AWS to gain this. And it's also, this is something we've heard directly from our providers, and we continue to build the innovation through that. And this is something really close to me. So I started in November 2019. And as you guys can see the graph, so this is something called grefs that Epic references, global references per second. And this is every time a database gets referenced, and this is how the performance is shown. So when I started in November 2019, we were at 7 million grefs. Today, we are at 105 million grefs, which means we've grown immensely, over 400%. And this is the reason why we have won some of our single biggest instances across the world. We have won the single biggest instance in New South Wales. And this is something that we are not going to stop. We will continue to grow our grefs to help our customers accommodate all those sessions that's needed.
Yeah, and I think Prathima, one thing to add is, as I kind of look at this chart, because obviously I've been a observer of how you guys have progressed to the market. I think one thing to note is the amount of, I would say, progression you guys have made even in the past year, right? So when we talk about grefs or global references, which for those of you out there is the performance on the database, the IRIS database. More importantly, when you look at 105 million grefs, not only does that surpass your competition, but also that's a significant percentage of the current install base, right? So I think when you look at Epic IRE, it, by the way, does not require the type of performance we need for prod or DR. But at the same time, like if we were to look at prod and DR for Epic, you guys can maintain that on a substantial amount of percentage of the market that's actually running Epic. Is that?
Yes. That's correct, Andy. And we can support today, and this is all running on our native AWS services. We can support more than 99% of our customers. And that's the reasoning behind, our EC2 team works directly with Epic. As you know, we have some of the team members who have worked at Epic with that expertise that we have in-house. We work with Epic on a weekly basis, and I have sync-ups every month where we talk about our partner strategy with them. So this is something that we have worked directly with Epic to come up with all the different instance types to provide the best performance, availability, and make sure, I mean, as a clinician, right, what is the most important thing that is important is when I have a patient sitting in front of me and when I open the application, can I just do it on time, right? Versus the spinning wheel that sometimes we go across. So definitely, this is something very close to us at AWS. We continue to innovate with partners and Epic directly as well.
Yeah, we love to see that performance progression.
Yes. So when I started again, November 2019, I feel like I have seen the whole history being at AWS for the last 5.5 years. We had 0 customers. And today, actually, the number is even better than 31. We are at 32. Every day, I seem like we get a newer win, so which is great news for us at AWS. And we continue to work with partners like I had on this journey. And as you guys can see, we have about 9 production customers who are running live on Epic on AWS, and then we have alternate production.
Yeah.
One thing I like to talk about is some of our customers, they start on their IRE journey, then they move to DR or production. However, we've seen some of our customers who started as a proof of concept, they've seen the success metrics achieved, then they've gone through DR, and then they've seen like the DR has provided the best performance during the cutover times. And their clinicians have asked those organizations, like, what have you changed last week that it's performing so well? And when the IT organizations have gone back and said that we had put the Epic application on cloud on AWS, so the clinicians have pushed them to say that, we should stick to the cloud. So those DR instances have become production. So we have all these amazing stories with our 32 customers that we support globally today. And the only thing I can say is, the list is going to grow on because we have a huge pipeline, and this is the momentum for us now.
Yeah, and I think just to kind of add to what you're saying is I think I'm proud to say it has contributed to that number, right? So I think not only from clients that we moved from to AWS, but also I think the other thing I've noticed in the past year and a half is this number has grown pretty substantially, right? So I think that's a testament to the investments that AWS has made in the healthcare space, the investments you guys have made to Epic on AWS. And then more importantly, I think that it's also a testament to obviously our clients who are starting to feel more and more comfortable around the thought processes of leveraging AWS for Epic. And so I definitely see the momentum shift. I think these numbers kind of prove it out I've kind of watched this number double, if not close to triple, since kind of when we first started having conversations in this space. And so, yeah, very excited to see kind of the momentum and the progress for the coming year.
Yep. Likewise.
So, Prathima, I know when we're kind of planning this webinar, there's some additional questions we wanted to kind of throw at you, because as I kind of speak to clients across the country and we kind of have these types of conversations, there's kind of a list of questions that come up a lot. And so if you don't mind, I'll kind of throw a couple at you here.
Yeah, let's go for it.
Yeah. So the first one being, Epic. What's Epic's stance on this? Are they encouraging providers to have an IRE strategy?
Yes. So Epic strongly is encouraging their customers to maintain those IRE environments as a part of their overall resilience strategy. As some of us know who work with Epic, they do not issue public press releases, but they have consistently recommended this approach through internal channels, whether during the discussions like Andy, you suggested at 2024 UGM, which is their user group meeting. And they also have this detailed guidance in the cloud documentation that most of the customers can have access to. Sterling Martin, the Epic CISO, has also emphasized the importance of having a dedicated recovery strategy in place. So that push has really helped. And I would say a lot of our wins that has come through over the couple of weeks, especially our Q1 in 2025, is around the IRE. And it gives a customer to test it out, have that solution, bring down your insurance premium, and also get into the cloud as a crawl, walk, run journey. So it's a kind of nice getting started, into the cloud transformation for customers.
Good to know. Mm-hmm. So the next question I was kind of thinking about, and I brought this up earlier, was just cloud read only and IRE. So I know for a couple of years there, a lot of the messaging was around cloud read only or CRO, and then now obviously has kind of transformed to IRE. Do you want to kind of explain the difference a little bit, just from the interpretation standpoint?
Yeah, sure. So cloud read only, what it does is it only provided like a historical read access to the clinical data. But let's be honest, right? It does not, it'll lose its usefulness over the time as the outage continues. So I've been part of the healthcare organizations where sometimes the outage will start off with hours and then it'll convert into a days. So imagine, the read access was a great way when we started with some of our customers on that journey. But as a clinician, having that right access, which is the main difference between the isolated recovery environment and the cloud read only. So in contrast, the IRE, what does it do is it will offer a limited write access to essential clinical functions, because you can be performing a surgery, right? Let's be honest. But at the same time, the hospitals can start admitting their patients. As a clinician, you can place orders. I can manage some of the medications if I have a patient that needs to be taken care. So it will provide some of the patient care that can continue during a disruption. And definitely, IRE is one of those solutions that hospitals can look into providing as a short-term access until all the systems come back. And like I said, sometimes it could take days to weeks as well. So it's a great solution to have in place.
Yeah, that's great. So Prathima, the next question I get pretty common when we have these types of discussions is, how do I access the IRE, right? So in the event of ransomware, I think, again, I'm thinking like the most severe cases where even laptops and endpoints are locked up and all the infrastructure is compromised. How are you seeing organizations plan for that, to access the IRE in the event of a ransomware event?
So yes, agree with you. As we all know, it impacts all the local systems. So users, the way they access the Epic IRE solution is through a secure, pre-designated URL and a separate VPN connection. This is where our partners and AWS can help our customers set up with the requirements, whether it's clean and use of all those unaffected devices to ensure like the secure operating environments. Our architects, we have Kevin Wong, we have quite a few architects on our end who can help our customers to prepare them for such scenarios where we can help those organizations to establish those internal processes, right? Because it's around the people providing access with the right credentials. How do you authorize those users?
Yeah.
This type of approach can help them, with the users to log in securely, even when the Active Directory is down. And also there has to be some internal communications, right? What are those channels when the internal communications are unavailable? So we work very closely with hospitals and health systems to come up with all those, to make sure all those processes are in place.
And you bring up a good point, right? So, and this kind of even goes back to the initial statement I was making around building and identifying the process around your CR or even your business continuity. And so not only are we focused on having clean endpoints, but maybe putting a process or a mechanism in place in support of that, right? So whether we have to have independent internet connectivity, whether there's a strategy around the way we disperse those laptops, and to your point, even how do we authenticate? And so, I think from an ahead perspective, we'd be happy to have that conversation and go deeper to kind of help organizations build and plan around that. So the next one is, why deploy IRE in cloud rather than on-prem? I'm sure that's a conversation that comes up a lot, especially with organizations that maybe are kind of accustomed or used to deploying on-prem. How would you react to that type of question?
Being at AWS, and also working with many of our customers, I would say some of our distinct advantages of having the solution over on-prem versus on cloud, which is AWS, is it provides the logical isolation, right? Significantly, it'll reduce the risk of those lateral movements in the events of attack. As some of you guys may know, we at AWS, security is our backbone, and some of our services that we have worked on is HIPAA eligible, high trust. So we take security as job zero, and cloud native security tools, right? This can help enhance the protection by offering the advanced monitoring, automated threat detection, and the robust compliance features. So the inherent elasticity of the cloud that can also allow the hospitals and health systems to operate at a lower cost, because let's be honest, as a CIO of a hospital, what's one of the bigger top three things on their mind is cost optimization.
Mm-hmm.
So what we could do as a part of the cloud strategy is to run a low cost pilot light mode during normal operations. So you can enable the rapid scaling during an event, which often is within the minutes. And additionally, what cloud can offer is it'll simplify the activation and automation. To spin up an environment, it can be just under 5 minutes versus, let's be honest, if you need to buy an upfront infrastructure investment that requires a lot of, the man front and the resources and the cap investments and all of those, right, which can help deliver, I think AWS, that's where we bring in favorable economics, just to maintain all those physical services, don't have to do a huge lift and shift versus spin it up in few minutes. You'll have the necessary storage and compute needed.
Yeah, and Prathima, I think you bring up a good point. I just want to react to a couple of things you said, right? You said capital investments, like that's a big one. I think there's no upfront capital investment where we can, as we're kind of talking about that utility cost, really keep it under $10,000 to $15,000 per month, without necessarily putting that large investment. Secondarily, I think you hit on a good point just in regards to just the elasticity of cloud, right? So being able to scale up the infrastructure pretty quickly, but also even just as organizations maybe even go through revisions or modernize their existing on-prem infrastructure, then they don't necessarily have to make another investment for this tertiary third copy, right? So I think the thought process is there's a lot of, to your point, a lot of favorable investments for organizations looking at DR for cloud, as well as now even IRE, where it's a little more on-demand focus, as well as limits the capital upfront investment for just underutilized resources as they are anyway. So I like that thought process. So one last question, Prathima, would be, you're talking to a new CIO or a CTO who's very much interested in this, and they're saying, hey, what are the first steps around implementing IRE? And how would you answer it in your words?
We are customer obsessed at AWS, and I would say I'm partner obsessed, working with partners like I had and others. So reach out to AWS or the trusted Epic partners on AWS like I had. We will help you with the initiation of the process. We have partner programs. We have AWS incentives that we can offset some of the initial setup through partners like I had. So if most of the CIOs are looking for ongoing operational expenses, how to reduce. So let's use some of those partner programs. And then preparing your organization, right? Finally, that is something very important to focus on readiness across the people, the process, the policy. So let us help you along this journey. And this is why we have a big teams, both Epic on AWS team within AWS, and then we have a head team to support you on this transformation, because we want to make it, with the technology that we can offer. And let's go help our customers, when this IRE workloads, especially, it's all around the business resiliency. We want to help them focus on their patient care while ahead and AWS, let's take care of the technology underneath,
Yeah. And Prathima, I think just to put a bow on what you said, right? So obviously we're very passionate about the technology, and we're very passionate about making it, work for the client. I think the reality is, like, as organizations are going through kind of the financial rationalization of these types of solutions, reach out to your head and AWS client directors, sales representatives. I think, to your point, there's a lot of incentivizations on the AWS side to help clients make this move. Mm-hmm. I think we talked about kind of the limited investment it really takes to move to something like IRE. I think it looks like a no-brainer, and absolutely can be just an extra piece into that larger puzzle that I was showing you previously. And so I think, for us, from our standpoint, from the head standpoint, we see this as a no-brainer for organizations that are looking to kind of put that lifeboat scenario in place. And also, I think kind of, you hit on an underlying advantage that maybe people don't even realize is it's a way to build cloud skills, right? Kind of maybe kick the tires a little bit about what would it look like to run Epic in cloud. But again, that's not necessarily the end all goal. The focus is how do we provide this capability for the organization if they get hit by ransomware. And I think, I think everyone can kind of stand by that. And so I think for my call to action, folks out there is reach out to your head and AWS counterparts. We'd be happy to bring myself and Prathima and the rest of the team behind here at head to kind of have these types of conversations around how do we go about deploying it. As I mentioned previously, like, we're talking a matter of weeks, not months, to get something like this in place. And then secondarily, look for part 2 of our cyber resiliency and healthcare webinar series, April 30th. You'll see some similar communication as you did for this webinar, and looking forward to having that conversation with the folks at Rubrik, as well as one of my peers, Jonathan Kowal. So I think that kind of wraps up Prathima on our end for today's webinar. And so I want to thank everyone who joined us. I know some of this is pre-recorded, so some of you might be watching via video, but I want to thank everyone for taking the time to hear this message, and more importantly, thanks for joining.